Hello and welcome to a special Session 0 for our limited run miniseries with Eldritch Automata, sponsored by Gehenna Gaming. Before we get into the cosmic horror and giant robot fighting mechanics of the game, I would like to introduce our cosmic delightful guest, Chris Tung. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I've been wanting to hang out with you guys for a while, so this is great.
Yes, we know Chris through his work with Pink City and the kick-ass events that you do with like cons and stuff. That's, I think, the first time we met you was the Fan Expo after party, and then we've just run into you all over. We ran into you in Philly, and it's
the spaces are small. You see each other everywhere all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Joined with me also is Niall and Ryan from the regular cast. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to our audience, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty stuff.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Tung. Most people on the internet know me as one of the co-founders of PinkCity.ca. Pink City is an anime gaming streetwear brand from Toronto, Canada. We do a lot of community events in the city as well. But I am also the producer, editor, and current GM of Super Journey Dudes, which is a comedy tabletop RPG podcast that I do with my brother and a couple friends. We currently are running a show called Blink Space Blues, which is the world's highest production Lancer RPG show. So if you like Cowboy Bebop and Gundam-inspired things, I mean, honestly, it's inspired by everything. Star Wars, Cyberpunk, all these cool things. Check us out. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on. We're in a couple festivals. We're up for a couple awards. I put my whole heart into this show. So as soon as you guys asked me to be a part of a mech thing, I'm like, you know what, mech stuff is my whole thing right now. So sign me up.
Yeah, the second we got reached out,
your name was the first one in our mouths.
The second Gehenna reached out to us and was like, you want to do this? We were like, we got to get Chris. Like, without a doubt, it's like just sort of like immediate knee-jerk reaction, just being like, yeah, Chris is going to be our guest for this one.
I appreciate it. Thank you for thinking of me. Yeah, I saw their booth actually at, I think it was PAX U. And I saw like the really dope art of like the mech stabbing that horror. Or about to stab the horror. And I asked him about it. I was like, you know what? As soon as this thing is ready, I am ready to play it. So when you pitched Eldritch Automata to me, I already was on board. So
it's a really cool system, and I think that's a great segue into talking about it. So Eldritch Automata is a game from Gehenna Gaming. It is a cosmic horror / mech game, TTRPG. It draws a lot of inspiration. Imagine just sort of like Gundam meets Lovecraft, and I think that's a really good way to sort of like get the vibe. The tone and vibe of the world and the world building itself is really, really cool. It kind of like it opens a lot of doors for you as the players and the GM to explore without sort of like pigeonholing you into like some real hard facts. It's just kind of like, essentially the backstory is there's a cataclysmic event when an entity known as the Architect descended from the skies to a cacophony of trumpets and noise that kind of drove everyone crazy over the course of a couple days. And then after that, everyone started almost like a rapture situation where people were turned into beams of light and disappeared. And the world was never the same since. When it left, it gave a warning of being like, I'll be back and I'm going to finish this job. But it left behind creatures known as seraphs and horrors. Seraphs are these sort of angelic monstrosity, and horrors are, as you can imagine, eldritch nightmares that stalk the world now. 90% of the population destroyed, and where we join the story of Eldritch Automata is a sort of desolate, hopeless world where a few survivors have all banded together and found hope in a hopeless world. And that is who you guys are going to be playing. You will be playing the survivors.
Yikes.
I think one of the coolest things that I read.
No pressure.
Yeah. Just got to save the world, that's all.
90% of us.
That's the thing that like I think is really cool about it is like when you're building your characters in the guide, it's like it's really, really important that you remember that you guys are not heroes, you are survivors. And I think that like really sets the tone of making characters and sort of like establishing yourself in the world of being like, oh, we're not beacons of like good. We're doing what we need to do to survive, and that's kind of like the whole vibe of the game. Now I've left out a fairly important part, and that's the mechs, the automata. Those are, it's kind of nebulous as to like where they came from and how they, like, some are made, some are found, some are discovered, some choose their owners, and it essentially they run on the personality of the pilots. They intertwine themselves with the essence of who that person is, and using that essence as what's called strands of relationships and bonds that you build with people, whether positive or negative, whether you love someone or hate someone. Those are all strengths that you can use to fuel your automata and their powers. So it really is a struggle between how much of yourself are you willing to sacrifice in order to survive. And that's the whole game is about give and take and a balance between power and humanity. Is there anything you guys want to talk about before we get into building characters? I know there's a lot in this system, and I think we can definitely geek out a little bit for a while if you want. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that like really stands out for any of you guys?
I particularly love the weapon building like aspects, and I think like I wasn't going to bring it up until we got to the weapons because I don't want to derail everything. But I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about it a little bit? Just like really quickly, we will get into it when we build weapons, but.
Yeah, so you're essentially meant, like there are ready-made weapons for you to choose should you want to, but you're meant to kind of like craft your own. And I don't know what it is. I just love drawbacks. I find them just so narratively fun.
Yeah.
And the fact that you get all these, like essentially open to you starting off, you have two types of weapons, so like your signature arm and your sidearm. And it's a really simple system, which is great, but a sidearm can have 1 point, and your signature weapon can have 3 points. And how it works is you add good things like, a damage tag or a range tag, or like, you could have your weapon hit multiple targets. And these things all incur like positive points. So, maybe 3. So if you want to have a weapon that ends at a 1, you have to then take a -2, either from 1 big negative or 2 smaller negatives to balance it out. So trying to like get to that really cool positive you want while making these really narrative choices that are just going to fuck you over, I'm sure, in your time of need is, to me, really, really fun. And then trying to like reconcile all those different parts into like a functioning weapon. I had a blast with that.
I think the weapon system showcases that it's very much a game of risks.
Yeah.
Like you have to build, fragile characters. Like when we get into that, I'm sure Dame will mention that it's all about building flawed characters. That's the point of it. That's where your power comes from. So with that, the weapons and the robots, that's sort of the overarching theme that we're not perfect. This isn't, like Hero Yui and his Wing Gundam, who's like flawless and, we're very susceptible to terrible things, especially emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you guys describe it like that, like I originally took like one of the pre-gen weapons because I figured those are balanced. But now that you explain it like that, I kind of want to tweak it to be more customized. Because the drawbacks are cool, but also like the things you could add are very, very cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna be probably changing mine.
Yeah, I'm gonna tweak it
until Dane says let's start. I'll probably be editing it.
I went down like that like the meme with all the string. That was me with my weapons. Yeah, so you should see the insane piece of paper I have writing them down. Like, but plus this and minus this, and there got to a point because there is a rule where you can't have more than a -5 total drawbacks.
Oh, okay.
I at one point was almost going there. There's like I need to stop.
My gun shoots once, but it has a lot of crazy things happen.
Yeah,
that's it. Right?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
So, okay, great. Let's, I guess, get into talking about characters and building characters.
Actually, I do have one question.
Yes.
One silly question. I hear so many different pronunciations of automata. What is it?
That's...
I wish I knew.
I call it automata.
Okay.
I say automata.
Yeah, I say automata too.
Okay.
But yours also sounds right, and I've also heard that. I've
Well,
heard Automata.
Ryan, what do you say?
Automata.
Oh no, that's even crazier.
Isn't that a Lion King song?
Guys, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm from Newfoundland. You cannot ask me about pronunciation. That's not going to fly.
When the game Nier Automata, whatever it's called, came out, I was like, everyone's pronouncing it differently. It's driving me nuts. And now this came out, and I'm like, well, we're back here, aren't we?
This is where we
live. We'll email the people in charge, and we'll get a final answer.
Yeah, we'll be like, how do we say it?
And we'll open up session 1 by Dane saying it flawlessly.
Yeah.
He won't stumble.
It all sounds right.
He won't mispronounce. It does, right? But mine's the best. And by that, I mean, we have the same one, right?
Yeah, I think you and Chris
so.
are.
Yeah, we have the same.
Yeah, we're obviously.
We win majority, I think.
I think you guys are like neutral. I'm lawful. Ryan is evil.
Yeah.
All right, let's go around and talk about characters. So the way characters work in Eldritch Automata,
You can say.
there's two parts of your personality. There's the pilot and there's the automata. Automata? Oh, God, now every time I say it, it's
I know. It's in my head now. It's in your head.
Just leave a blank space and we'll edit in the right one.
Just call it EA, but that's also awful.
Yeah. It's in the game.
Yeah, there's two sides.
I'm pretty sure that's why they have so many slashes between the E and the A, just so you never...
So when you're building your character, it's like half your stats come from your personality and half come from your mech, and then you merge those together into like a full-fledged character. So we're going to focus on the pilots right now, and that is the human aspect of it. So I'm just going to go around based on the clockwise of the people that I see in the order that I see it. So now we're going to start off with you. Tell us a little bit about your character. We'll do the I think we'll talk about the ambitions. We'll talk about our regrets. We'll try to keep it loose because again, I want a lot of the game revolves around discovery and building bonds and stuff, and I think that will be fun to do narratively. So we'll keep the ambitions and regrets vague. We'll talk about your archetype and then sort of some of the talents that you're taking.
Sure. So my character, her name is Alexis Kane, she, her pronouns. The pilot archetype I'm choosing is superior, inferior. Although I think I'm saying that backwards. It's the inferior, superior. I don't know if we want to delve into that a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about it a little bit. Like the sort of like the cool thing is like every one of the archetypes comes with almost like a psyche val as a way to I think that's such cool flavor because like your kind of mental state is so important that all of these things are based on, I think, also psychological profiles, or at least a lot of them. Like I'm pretty sure Hedgehog's Dilemma is
their real names of things.
Yeah. So I could read it out or I could paraphrase it.
Whatever you want, whatever, it's up to you.
I think it's basically like, even the first line kind of gives it. It's like you're experiencing significant pressure to maintain a certain image or reputation. So there's like this weird duality of being either seen or held as superior and then being either literally inferior or worrying that you are. And that kind of like the duality of that, the complexity and the like tension between those existing ideals, which I found like a really fun thing to do, or hopefully anyway. So her ambition is to earn the hope that's been placed on her shoulders because she's essentially like the poster girl for the military after being a survivor in this one like very important mission. She was the sole survivor, so she's being heralded as this hero. So her ambition is to like live up to that, and her regret is survivor's guilt because she's the only one that came back and her colleagues didn't. So she's kind of haunted by that, hoping to get to this place where people are saying that she is.
Kick-ass. Cool. Ryan, tell us a little bit about your character.
Yeah, so my character is the Sheltered. So if you listen to our main show, Merrick is usually pretty serious and pretty, to the point about the mission. So I wanted to play something a little bit different than that. So I picked the one archetype that is supposed to be cheerful and inquisitive in this dark, terrible world. So they were someone who were sort of very protected, raised, very sheltered, and sort of dealing with that. So knowing as an adult that the world isn't a safe place, that terrible things have still happened, but now you're dependent on other people. You have a hard time standing on your own, so you're looking for the strong people around you to kind of look after you. You sort of need that.
It's funny when you said you're going to be the Sheltered, I read up on like all the archetypes that you guys were picking, and for me, when I heard Sheltered, I thought it was going to be like super guarded. like you don't let people in or whatever, and not kind of like the opposite where it's like you are so dependent on other people to maintain your positive attitude, and that like you're this cheery sort of like happy-go-lucky, almost naive. And I thought that was like a good little twist, because I really thought it was going to be like, oh, you're super guarded and you're kind of like a, I'm an island sort of situation, and it's quite the opposite.
No, man, and even how the mechanics, when we get into the mechanics of how it works, like it's very much like that sharing and that reliability when we get into how we all connect to each other is very important, even how the character works mechanically,
Amazing. What's your character's name?
My character's name is Simon.
Oh, yeah.
He, him pronouns.
Amazing. Chris, introduce your character.
Okay, so my character's name is Wayne Dow, he, him pronouns, and his concept is kind of reliant on a question that I have for you.
Yeah.
How far from the Advent Day does our campaign take place? Roughly?
Pretty far. It's long enough that like the military has gotten a foothold. They're certainly not winning, but they've established bases. There's factories that are making automata. There are pilots. There are squadrons. There are people. Like there is a fairly decent front and defense force. But I mean, it's like everyone is scraping by. So I would say like maybe like a decade after Advent Day.
Oh, okay, that's not too bad. Yeah, so that makes sense with my concept. I'm glad that is the answer. Basically, my idea was a former weapons manufacturer. The weapons manufacturer, he had a whole company similar to like a Stark Industries, where he kind of provided weaponry for the world. And then on Advent Day, he was there when he witnessed the things that he spent his entire life building do absolute jack shit to these things, and just kind of becoming so desensitized, becoming empty, which is the archetype that I am playing, based on those experiences, based on seeing, his life's work be absolutely meaningless in the face of a real threat, when his whole thing was weapons and protecting people. And so there's, his ambitions and his, guilt and regrets are kind of intertwined in that way. And I wanted, him to be an older fellow and him to have been there when Advent Day went down, and for him to actually witness it himself. I think that would make him a little more, a little more empty on the inside. And that archetype is, I could do a brief little look at what the book says. But yeah, experiencing significant emotional disconnect from the world around them, feeling of being empty, unable to develop or experience emotions, desensitization obviously is a huge thing. Also being a former, weapons manufacturer, I think can contribute to that.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That's kind of my concept.
I love it.
Nice.
The nice thing, and I guess we should touch on it here because you brought it up, is traditional weaponry can't hurt or harm either the Seraphs or the Horrors. They have something what's called an ego field, which is their sort of like sheer power of will and existence protects them from traditional weaponry. And in fact, the only thing that can fight them, and is why the automata is so important, is the fact that their weapons are able to pierce these ego fields. And it's why they're so, so essential to the war effort and the combat. Is without them, humans and humanity are powerless against the Seraphs and the Horrors.
As soon as I read that our weapons dealt nothing to them, I was like, whoever was in charge of that must feel like shit.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's my character.
Hell yeah. No, that's really, really fucking cool.
Sweet.
Let's talk about talents. So every pilot has a set of skills, kind of like feats or class abilities in other more sort of traditional RPGs. They gain 2 talents from their pilot archetype and 2 talents from their mech archetype. So, Niall, what talents did you take?
So the first talent I chose is applause. And when I perform spectacularly, whether it's a simple task or the battle, I can ask the other players around me if they're impressed. And for everyone that says yes, it lowers my stress.
Hell yeah. That's great. And I want you guys to think about this while we're talking about it. Is I want you guys to be honest with a lot of the abilities come with like, oh, you have to ask a question, like especially with like strand talents and stuff like that. It's like you ask a question, and I really want you to think about how your characters would react, and not try to metagame or be like, well, strand would be helpful here, so I'm going to try to say this. I think the game really shines when you dig your heels in to who your character is. Not that I think that you guys, I mean, like, I've played with Niall and Ryan for years now, and I know that you will always make the interesting choice, not the good choice. But I wanna focus on that, especially in this campaign, because I think that's where the system shines, is sort of that brutal honesty and that willingness to kind of fuck over your other player, quote unquote, because there is other abilities that do that as well.
Often yourself too.
Yeah.
Like some of them are really gonna be tricky. Like even my strand talent isn't that dramatic, but like it is kind of gonna be hard to play out, I think, in a very fun way. It's a good thing to get your teeth into. My second talent for my pilot is not to be outdone, where I gain an additional dice when I attempt to show off.
Nice. Hell yeah.
Yeah. I feel like they go hand in hand very well.
Yeah, let's talk about your strand talent.
So my strand talent is when I have an intimate moment with someone, ask them what they see in a perfect partner. If it matches the traits you see in yourself, gain a strand.
Nice.
And I don't know yet where Alexis is going to stand on that, because I think I could very easily be almost like delusional and think I'm very good at a lot of things, or be so the opposite where I think I'm worthless and not ever say yes. So it's going to be really, that's one thing I'm going to have to nail down, is like how she sees herself specifically for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great little narrative thing to get your teeth into.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of meat on the bones that Gehenna has like put into this system, which is why I am so excited to run it. Strands, we talked about it very briefly, but strands are sort of the bonds that you make. Again, positive or negative. They can be bitter resentment, or they can be the love of your life. Like they hold the same amount of weight and same amount of power. They are the bonds that you create that you can then call on and power your abilities and make yourself stronger. So generating strands is actually a pretty essential and important part of the game and gameplay. As much as like you can build a cool mech and roll really well, without the strands, a lot of your sort of latent abilities kind of fall by the wayside. So it really, really encourages roleplay, which I think at this point in my RPG career, I would rather. I used to be a big fan of the crunch, and now it's like I want the story, baby. I want reasons for you guys to like role play and be your character for like long swaths of time before I even be like, okay, roll a dice, do this, do that. I think that's a really enticing situation to be in.
I don't know if we really want to get sidetracked talking about strands, but one of my favorite things about them is the fact that you literally, like, it's more dangerous making them as well.
Yeah.
Because, like, much like, in a relationship, opening your heart, you could get hurt, but it's very much like that, where, like, yeah, the more strands you have, the better, but you're opening yourself up because you can fuck over other players through your strands as well.
Yeah.
In two different ways, one of which is very, very powerful.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, if we want to talk about it, I think it's fine, too. That's the point of a session 0. Strands are interesting because you can tap them, which means you kind of put strain on the relationship. You put a little wrench in the gears of like your bond with someone, but allows you to generate an additional power or whatever. But then you can also break it. You can shatter your bonds with people, and that has benefits for you sometimes. But specifically, if you don't want someone to accomplish something, you essentially make it almost impossible for them to succeed. All of their dice pool, all their bonuses go down to 1, so they have a 1 in 6 chance of succeeding at their whatever they're attempting to do. So if you guys are at odds at a decision at some point in time, and one of you wants to do something and one of you doesn't, you have a bond, you can break that bond.
So there's 2 ways you can do it. If you have a single strand, you can break that strand and they get a -2. Much like if you use a strand for yourself, you get a +2. But if you have 3 or more with someone, you can break all of them, and that reduces them to 1 dice. Yeah. So, like, again, that more, like, the closer you are to someone, they have more ammunition to hurt you with.
Yeah, because you can make like an infinite amount with a single person, right? Like, there's no limit.
Yeah, there's no limit.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Ryan, let's talk about your talents.
Yeah. So my first talent is called Put on a Smile. I may raise my stress level by 1 in order to raise my empathy by 2 for a single scene. So what will become very clear about my character is that I built an empathy tank, and that's all he does.
Amazing.
So it's a big thing for me. So being able to boost that and to even at the cost of a stress is pretty important. And it works very well with my second ability called Break the Cutie. So whenever I take stability damage, I can choose to switch my empathy score with any other stat for a single scene.
Okay.
So I can take my giant empathy stat and I can move it to any of the other stats, which the stats are, so for people listening, are strength, agility, wits, and empathy. So I can move that around. So, for example, I get hit and I want to bring it into my agility to make sure my next attack definitely hits. Then I can do that, but then my empathy is low for the rest of the combat kind of thing.
Right.
Nice.
And my strand talent, if we're talking about those, when I have an intimate moment with somebody, I regain all my tap strands, and then I make a strand.
Nice.
Damn.
That's very good. Cool. Chris, what talents did you take for Wayne?
All right. So for the empty, I took, so the first skill that I took was unnerving. I think all of these, like, that I chose kind of really speak to what he's been through and seen. Unnerving, your lack of emotional lucidity is off-putting. Gain 2 additional dice when manipulating others.
Okay.
Going to be interesting. And then the second one, also kind of playing into the emptiness, a cold like ice. It's hard to put you off or make you panic. Once per round, you can ignore a single one on the stress die you've rolled.
Nice.
So
very handy.
Yeah, we'll see how those play out. I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic with like Ryan's character, who's the happy-go-lucky, where I'm like I've lost all sense of anything.
We have the complete 3 tiers of emotions.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, I think the dynamic is going to be quite fun to play with. Great. What is your strand talent?
My strand talent, it says, it's hard for you to do intimacy. When you have an intimate moment with someone, decide if it's intimate for them or for both of you. If it's only them, gain a tapped strand. If it's intimate for both of you, gain a strand.
Okay, cool. So the neat thing, again, strands we're going to talk about strands a lot because it is kind of like the core of the gameplay. Tap strands are sort of like strained relationships. So much like the way that if sort of you and your best friend went on a very long trip and kind of got on each other's nerves, you might need a little bit of time apart, but then getting together the next weekend and having a couple beers together is enough to sort of replenish that. And that's really all you need to do to like untap strands. Is like you have to spend a certain amount of time investing in repairing that relationship and you regain it. So it's neat that like you make a strand, but it's already tapped. So you kind of have to like almost put in extra work just to make a basic connection. I think that's a really cool flavor for especially the narrative aspect of your archetype.
Tapping one in that positive way, I don't think is inherently like straining that relationship. I think it's like you're just drawing on that like bond between you. You definitely do exhaust it until it's filled, but I don't think it's always like a negative thing.
Yeah,
I think sometimes it could be like a shared victory could be, your thing.
Yeah, at least it's a strand of some kind, right?
If you have a strand with someone, it's usable both ways, but only once, as far as I'm aware, right? So it's like, if we had one and I tapped it, you wouldn't be able to use it.
Yes.
So that's really fun.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a two-way street. So if it's why it encourages you to make multiple strands with multiple people. But again, as Niall said, it's like the more attached and invested you are to someone, the more chances there are to be hurt by it. Much like a real relationship. Like, the more you invest in a person, if they do something terrible to you, that hurts a lot more than if it's just like a random dude you work with or just like a faceless coworker. If they do something shitty, you're like, that sucks, but like whatever. But if it's like your best friend who does something, you're like, cool, that's gonna take some therapy to get over.
You're like, damn, I only have 1d6 now.
Yeah. Let's dive into the juicy mech part of stuff. I'm excited to hear what you guys have done with this. Now we'll go back to you. Tell us about your mech.
So I chose the prototype, which I am really excited about. So it's like an experimental, cutting edge tech automata that like is like, top of the line, brand new, and not a lot is known about it. So talent-wise, I took 2 ones I really like. So one is called Wonderful Machinery. First time I fail a roll in combat, I can instead just make it a success. And then the next time I succeed in a roll, I have to reduce my successes by 1. So the way successes work, every 6 you roll is a success. All you need is 1, but the more you have, you can spend them on additional things called stunts. So for damage, for example, you can do an extra point of damage per success, or let's say you're rolling like mobility to get out of an area. If you get an extra success, you can give it to one of your friends to get them out as well.
Yeah.
So it's really helpful. So reducing my next success by 1, not great.
Especially if you only have 1 success on that roll.
Exactly. Then I would fail.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fun, again, like pros and cons. And my favorite one is Ego Terror. So I have the ability to negate the ego fields of enemies. I can activate this talent as a fast action to negate a target's ego field temporarily. I roll my ego field against theirs. On a successful roll, their ego field is negated till the end of my turn. If I fail, I lose mine. And either way, I lose a point of ego for using this talent.
Nice.
So again, I feel like just trying to live up to this heroic nature and just trying to do risky shit, being able to be like, okay, I could sacrifice my own protections, but hopefully I will take theirs down.
Yeah.
I think it's really fun.
Hell yeah. Is there another part? There isn't, right? It's just the berserking that we'll talk about in a bit. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
We're going to keep berserking a secret as well. So both archetypes, both the pilots and the automata, both have sort of like dire situations. One is a breakdown for the pilots, and that's like a full mental breakdown that puts them in a state in which they have to meet a certain requirement, or they have to do a certain thing, or something has to happen to take them out of it. The same thing with berserking. It is a special... They call it like an ability that you can sort of evoke. So it repairs your mech, but it also puts you in a state of like kind of ego death, where you forego your personality, your humanity, your sense of self, and allow the mech to take over and sort of do its own bidding or achieve its own goals or ambitions. And so when you berserk, you kind of are locked into a course of action that needs to ride itself out, and then you are kind of at the mercy of whatever that is. You usually get a really, really great benefit, but also a pretty horrific drawback as well. And it's a cool thing. It's like, do I live or do I die and deal with the consequences? The berserking is really cool. And again, I want to keep that close to our chest, because I think I want you guys to be as surprised as the audience and as I do, because I've looked at them just mechanically, but I already kind of don't remember much except for Niles. And so I want to keep that kind of like a secret from the audience, so that if it does hapen, there's a bit of like
I think you mean when it does happen.
It's when it happens.
Yeah.
We're going to see.
Yeah, those are little tidbits that later on you're going to find out what those things are, and they are fucking 1, very cool, and 2, very scary.
Very scary.
Very scary. Ryan, tell us about your mech.
All right, so Niall went new and fancy, and I did the opposite, and I picked the Ancient. So whereas Niall's is like a embodiment of like all the improvements that humanity has made on these machines, mine was just here, or just showed up. It's shrouded in mystery. It's got a bunch of weird runes and markings on it that we don't fully understand, but they still have they're still very powerful, and they sort of more freaky mind stuff than like precise weaponry. There we go. That's a word. Yeah. So the first talent I chose is called Curse of the Ancients. So I am haunted by all the past owners of my robot.
Hell yeah.
Yep. So I can tap into the dark energy that lies within the machine and unleash a curse upon my enemies. So this weakens and disorients them. So it's an additional sidearm that I get. So when we get into weapons, I have an extra one. It ignores all ego field reduction, but for every one I roll, when I roll dice for that, I take damage.
Damn. Okay.
And I'm using, that's cool. A roll. Yeah, it is really cool. It uses empathy and command, so leans into my empathy.
Oh damn.
Powers.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's something aggressive, and then I chose something a little bit helpful. I chose Soul Siphon. So I absorb and convert the life energies of fallen foes, and then I can use them to heal myself and you guys.
Nice.
So every time we defeat someone, I roll empathy, and then with each success, we get temporary hit points that stack.
Cool.
Hell yeah.
How temporary? Or are they just like...
I guess for the scene?
Cool.
Yeah. I like the idea that like Niles is like shiny chrome, like fully buffed, and then like yours almost looks like terracotta. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of like like ancient. Like I don't know why, but like I'm thinking like Mayan almost in.
Yeah. Sort of like it's like it's this that's
Is
how
he
I
really round
it
in
too.
your mind as well?
I'm in my head. It's a lot of weird edges.
In my head, you're round, almost like a Big Daddy from like BioShock. You know what I mean? You're like that diving bell, like.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you've got like terracotta colors and like Mayan like markings.
Yeah, just weird glyphs. Yeah, I like. Yeah, round, big and fat is probably pretty cool. I like if you're
My mind
sneaking
went
like
to Castle in the Sky. If anyone has seen that, like those like really old robots that are just like so rusted, but yeah, they're really cool.
Yeah,
and it's funny that you said like sleek and shiny for mine, because in Thor 1, that robot that like comes down and tries to kill him,
the Destroyer.
That's kind of what I'm like imagining. I feel like that, but they're all like all the like stripes are like almost like articulated like bits. It's anyway.
Hell yeah.
That's kind of what was in my head in a way.
Chris, let us know what your robot looks like.
All right. So beware, everybody. I chose the Collateral, which is basically I am a danger to everyone around me, even my friends, which I thought was very suitable for someone who was, a former weapons manufacturer, also someone who's, empty on the inside. So the two skills that I chose. The first one, obviously, is explosive. My signature weapon has been modified with this explosive results and always counts as having the area descriptor tag and the friendly fire flaw tag.
Okay.
So try not to get too close to me, both emotionally and physically. That's my whole idea. And then the second one, which is even crazier than the first, Scorched Earth. Just the name itself should strike fear into everyone's hearts. Once per combat, upon successfully hitting an enemy, you can spend a stunt to declare this talent. Is stunt one of your successes? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you get a success and you have like even one additional 6, you can spend one of those on.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Your automata rains down hell as part of its attack, scorching the entire zone. The effect lasts until the end of combat. Your automata is considered immune to their own scorch. If you do this, reduce your ego by 1. And scorched is basically the zone is covered in fire and ash. Anyone standing in this zone at the end of their turn immediately takes a point of damage. Exiting this zone requires a successful piloting roll. So I
wish I wasn't just melee.
Yeah, it's I'm also melee too, which I'm getting in there and making it everyone's problem.
That's amazing.
So the way that ranges work, usually I was really concerned with combat in terms of a podcast setting, because usually with like mechs, there's a lot of like measuring and a lot of the way they've done combat here is very fun and very simple, where it's like there's just zones, so it's like near, close, medium, and like far, and that's kind of like you just talk about that in ranges of zones, as opposed to worrying about like, oh, I have this weapon has 50 feet of range, this weapon has whatever. You just say it just zones, and it's like you don't have to worry too much about measuring, and I think that lends itself again to the sort of like narrative structure of like just tell a story and do cool shit, and don't worry about breaking out the fucking little clear ruler and measuring, and it lends itself to the theater of the mind that we do here on the show. So it's very, very exciting. Cool. I think that covers our character creation. It's funny. When I was reading through the Collateral, I 100% was thinking of like the one of the talents of like the one where you get to like just collapse buildings. Like you just like run through them. I was like, I'm
glad you can bust through debris.
Yeah.
That one's sick.
Yeah. Hey, maybe I'll get it later.
I was like, I'm glad you didn't take it right off the bat, because I was like, I feel obligated to just be like, there's buildings everywhere. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're. So I think I will still sort of like, I'm going to change the setting a little bit so that you will have things to play with. Because like, I would hate for you to like take an archetype and then be like, cool, I don't have any buildings to collapse on anyone, despite the fact that that's like the one of the coolest things I could do. So I will be tweaking locations to make sure that should you go that route, you will have plenty of opportunities to smash it.
Sweet. Yeah, that's actually the reason I didn't take that talent, because I was like, that requires a building to be around, and who knows where we'll be. So.
Yeah. Cool. I don't know what else we need to talk about. Weapons. Yes.
Weapons.
There it is. All right. Now I know
Favorite.
you're crazy horny to do it, so let's get into it.
Sure. So the way it works is you basically get a sidearm and a signature weapon, or I believe, is it sidearm and automata gear, or signature weapon and
Signature
automata gear?
and automata gear, yeah.
Cool. I went with 2 weapons because my girl is reckless. And for my signature weapon, it's a nanobite axe. I chose the highest damage you can get, which is 7. My range is close. My buff on it is it does damage over time. And my drawbacks are that it is noise producing and jam prone. So the noise producing, effectively, the way I see it in my head, it's this axe, but it's got like the same metal, like almost articulating parts that are part of me. They come bursting out the head of the axe to form the blade before I hit, which is the thing that can jam, but it's also the thing that makes the noise. So it screeches and screams as this metal is forced out. When I lodge the axe into an enemy, those things remain, and on my next turn, they like start to move almost through this like nanotechnology. So it widens the wound. So I pump the axe, these things screech out the top, I lodge it in something, I pull it out, they remain, and then they cause more damage on the next turn.
Cool.
And I think that's really fun. And I also think with this person and their kind of need to be impressive, it's a very high risk weapon. And with her fragile mental state, if I panic, it jams. And that's going to suck.
Yeah.
So that's my signature weapon. My sidearm is the jam shank.
Okay.
Not sticky jam, but it's effectively it's lowest damage, lowest range. So it does 3 damage. It's close range. I gave it the stunning quality, which means if it works, it will stun them for the next turn, which I believe takes away their slow action. But I also made it accurate, so I get an extra dice to roll with it. But to make it fit the 1 tag, I had to put some downsides. So it is non-lethal, so I can never kill anybody with it. It can only ever do that 3 points of damage once it doesn't take them to 0 and stun. And also there's a cooldown on it. It's, I feel it, in my head, it's like the actual blade itself detaches into you and continues to create this like electrical current. So when I pull it out, it's like I either need to like reload it by putting another one on, or I just can't use it for a certain amount of time. I just thought that would be her panic button if her other weapon stops working. Maybe buy her some time. And then for her gear, I did take a sidearm and a pilot gear. So her sidearm is called a spring hammer. To me, it's like her training weapon, where like it mimics the axe, but it's not the axe because they can't make that. So it's just like a weighted version. Folds open, but because it's so heavy and you have to unfold it, it has the slow drawback, but it has the knockback perk. So if I do hit things, I can knock it into an additional zone, and if I hit it into objects, it does an extra 2 points of damage. And the damage on that is the medium damage, which is 5. And then for her pilot gear, she has a quick deploy grapnel, which is just like imagine Titanfall grappling.
Oh yeah. Ryan, are your weapons? I know you're going to tweak it. Do you want to just talk roughly like aesthetic, and then you can figure out tags later as you beautiful mind it?
Yeah, the concept for me is I sort of want to be the one that's farther back because I'm depending on everyone around me to do all the hard work. So I'm looking at range, right? So I want my main weapon, which I'm working on, is going to be a laser bow. So it's going to be a bow, you pull back, a beam of laser. It fits with like the ancient theme of the machine as well to let go. So that's gonna have a long range, medium damage, and it's gonna have a cooldown. So it's gonna, I can only use it every once in a while, every other turn. And then from there, it's going to be focused on support with my equipment, and my sidearms will all be range. I don't think I'm going to take a single melee weapon because I do not want to be close to anything. I should always have a buddy next to me doing that for me.
Nice.
Is the concept. So laser bow was just a really cool image. So I went with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All right, Chris, what weaponry are you looking at with the collateral?
So originally I chose like the pre-made thermal spear. I think that fit what I wanted to do the best, but I think I may tweak some of like the descriptors and flaws just based on some flavor things. Because right now it has charging, shield 1, and charging is 1, and then the heavy flaw, which is -2, which balances it out, and then heavy damage. I do want to keep the heavy damage, and I get a free area descriptor and a free friendly fire flaw. That's a flaw. I don't know why I put that in descriptor. Whoops. That's definitely a flaw. Friendly fire? Kidding me? Yeah, I may switch those around. I don't really know if I care so much about the shield thing, and maybe because heavy makes me slower, and I don't really want to be slow, so I might adjust those a little bit.
Nice.
But in terms of like flavor, I think it'd be cool for. So my character Collateral is a melee character. I think. When witnessing, arms and manufactured arms to do jack shit against these horrors, my character kind of reverted back to more archaic means of violence. So that's why he's going with melee, and he's harkening back to, if anyone is familiar with like Romance of the Three Kingdoms or Dynasty Warriors, Guan Yu. His green crescent blade, which is kind of similar to like a large bladed naginata. However, I'm imagining like the end is some kind of like thermal or energy blade of some kind.
Hell yeah.
That he can make just like blast out into a whole area if needed. And yeah, that's kind of like like harkening back to like ancestral weapons, because clearly the modern ones aren't doing so great. But yeah, I'm going to tweak it a little bit. It's not going to be the thermal spear. It's going to be more of like a Guan Dao, I think is what they're called. But a cool mech version, I think, would be very sick.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Very cool. Is there anything...
Oh, sorry. Also the Automata gear, because we get one of those or a sidearm or something.
Yep.
I thought it'd be cool to give myself a gravitational pulse generator. It creates a temporary gravitational field that can destabilize nearby enemies. I can use this gear when I roll close combat with an additional +2 modifier, and then I gain a free stunt with all the rolls using this gear to immediately force my target prone. I think as a close combat person, I think that's going to be great to be knocking people prone left and right.
Especially if you're using a spear, like that's kind of like what spears were for. We're just like stabbing people.
Well, I'm imagining, since I'm creating the area to be so like hostile too, like when they're prone, it's going to be even harder for them to get out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
light the ground on fire, throw them on the ground, stab them. That's that works.
Yeah.
Incredibly effective.
But it will also work against my allies, which is what I'm worried about.
I'm so fucked.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'm excited to see how this all plays out in combat, and I think it's going to be messy. And that's the way this game is meant to be played. If there's nothing else you guys want to talk about character-wise, I'm happy to go into sort of a briefing of what the campaign is going to look like for you guys. The
only two things I can think of is we haven't gone through skills, which, I don't know if we want to, or when do you want us to make our strands?
I think, I guess we could do that now. Or
we can do it at the end if you want to hit us with,
I'm going to give you guys some flavor and context as to like what the world is going to look like, what you guys are going to be doing, and where you are, and then we can figure out strands. Because of the nature of this game, we've done this off air, but I think it's important to talk about in a session 0 is safety tools and safety rules. Because of the nature of the game and how intense it is and how horror driven it is and how it does rely a lot on sort of mental health, and there is like an archetype that focuses on like self-harm and stuff like that. So I think it's important to talk about in any session 0 is safety tools. We are using lines and veils as our primary source, which I have sent out, and we will be reviewing sort of before every session to make sure that we're all playing. I'm also going to introduce the X card as well. I think that's really important in a game like this. So typically the X card is sort of a card in the center of the table that anyone can pull at any point in time, and it is a hard stop to anything that we're doing. For the nature of the show, we are telling a narrative thing, so we can't really just ignore it. But we will take a moment to reframe off air and figure out what we can do to make everyone feel comfortable and safe. The way we'll be using that, because we don't have a card, because we're doing remotely, just hold your hands up in the shape of an X in camera so that we can all see it. And that will be our signal that we need to take a hard pause and reframe the scene so that we all feel safe and comfortable. Other than that, feel free to add to lines and veils whenever you want, and we will review them every episode when we record to make sure that everyone is good. I think it's important to do that for everything that you play, regardless of how serious it is. But this game, I think, especially requires a little bit of extra care based on just subject matter and content. But that being said, let's talk a little bit about the campaign and the setting. In terms of history, shortly after the Advent Day, the day that the architect showed up and fucked up the whole world. Years later, there are sort of anomalies that happen all the time. Horrors roam the world. Seraphs descend and cause chaos and continue to essentially harvest life and take them away in these beams of light. But the one thing that has descended down to the earth that has not been, as of yet, hostile is a meteor. In a strange act of physics, this meteor almost descended, instead of crashing in. And it's good because of the size of this thing. This thing is huge, several kilometers in diameter. And it lowered itself slowly enough to not do any real lasting seismic or geological damage. It still makes a giant crater where it lands, but this massive meteor has landed, and for a very long time it was monitored. It seemed to draw a bunch of horror attention at first, but after a while they dispersed. A few still lingered around the area, and after about a year or two, the military force sent out a scouting party and a team to sort of do an investigation of it. They went, they deemed it safe of radiation. There didn't seem to be, other than sort of the initial sort of few stragglers of horrors that were around that were killed. They secured this giant meteor. And in initial scans, they find that there is several useful minerals and materials, namely a very strong and workable and lightweight metal that the military sees the opportunity and the value of, especially in terms of creating automata. So, after another year of development, they build a base, and it's just referred to as the crater. A base is built around it. It becomes a mining operation in which they are carefully and hesitantly mining this meteor. They are not strip mining it. They are taking their time to make sure that this isn't a trap, that they aren't discovering anything or disturbing anything. They are being very, very careful because everyone on this base is nervous about this thing. Regardless of how brazen or anything, everyone is either believes it to be a bad idea or is we've got to definitely be suspicious of this thing. So there is an air of sort of caution over this base, and morale is pretty low, which is why the three of you have been sent in as sort of morale boosters, led by Alexis, who is sort of this new poster child of the war. You guys are sent in to be look, everything is fine. You have this hotshot, you have these incredibly talented pilots of automata here to protect you. If anything goes wrong, they will take care of it. And you guys are stationed as sort of morale-boosting heroes that are meant to calm the fears of the workers that are mining this meteor. For the sake of you, Chris, we're going to say that this thing landed in kind of the center of a city. So there is a natural barrier as well of this city that surrounds this crater, kind of like the downtown core of skyscrapers and buildings. And they have repurposed some of the underground subway tunnels as well to transport the materials and get around the base as well. So it's kind of a giant crater, a base around it, and then around that is what's remaining of the city after sort of the apocalypse. And you guys are there to keep the peace, protect any horror attacks. That is sort of like the key point of it. The morale boost is sort of a secondary benefit. And that is what we will be examining while we are playing this campaign, is sort of the activities and daily going-ons of this military base that is currently mining this mysterious meteor.
Sweet. Thanks for giving me buildings to smash.
You're welcome. If someone has the ability to crash a building, I'm not going to take that from them. I'm going to make sure that you have every opportunity you want to smash a building. So now that you guys have a little bit of context, I think now is a good time to start building strands. And I think we're going to do like a 1-for-1 kind of situation. So Niall, you'll have a strand with Ryan and Chris's character. Chris, you'll have one with Niall and Ryan. And so everyone will get 2 strands, I think, is the way the math works out on that. So like Niall, you get to choose one for Chris and Ryan, and then Chris will choose one for you and Ryan. And then so we'll end up having 2 for each character. I'm going to reverse it, and we're going to start with Chris, if you would like. What connection do you think Wayne has with Alexis?
I'm trying to think about that. Since Alexis is, I guess, a leader type, I think in a way Wayne might see a bit of himself in her in that way, in the way that he was, a leader of a company, an entrepreneur, a CEO, like someone who kind of took charge. Who, I mean, in this day and age, he's kind of lost that since the Advent Day. His company probably doesn't exist anymore, I would imagine. It's kind of defunct. These weapons don't do anything to these creatures. So he doesn't have that leadership in him anymore. So seeing that in Alexis, he might respect that.
Okay. I was going to say, I was curious to see which way you were going. It's like, are you going to respect it or resent it? Yeah. Okay, cool. So I think with strands, I think you list sort of like a descriptor of it and not just a name, if I remember correctly. Because I know the one description of the strand was like Battle of something Bay, like Tasker Bay or whatever.
I see.
I think it can be any. It could be as simple, or it could be as like a memory. I think it is pretty broad, if I remember correctly, of what it can be. I think it's just important that it has a name, just so you can differentiate between them.
Yeah,
so when you're breaking
I can call it leadership or something.
Yeah, maybe yeah, like respect Alexis's leadership or something like that. Yeah. Great. Ryan, we're gonna do your connection to Alexis.
Big sister Alexis. I think being independent that I am, I think and especially with what I've sort of done with his backstory, his family, fun fact, dead.
What?
So, what? In the apocalypse? So I think he very much, like, because that was his original protection, was familiar bonds. So now that he sort of projects that, I think, on other people a lot. So he likes to call them, like, maybe not all the time, but in his brain, like, this is my big sister Alexis. She's gonna protect me. She always knows what's gonna be right. She's never gonna make a mistake, and she's always gonna look out for me.
I'm sure that's gonna go great.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all.
Nope.
Oh boy.
Okay, Niall, let's do your connections with Alexis' connections with Simon.
Oof. Shouldn't be here.
Ooh.
Too green. Doesn't have what it takes.
Okay.
I hate that. It's funny. If you had gone bad, I would have gone nice, but I feel like
cool. Then what is your connection? What is your strand with Wayne?
Again, I feel like, because it is 2 ways, she also would feel that respect, but it feels boring to just do that. I think she has a bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like disgust, because it's been a decade, right? Since the fall.
Yeah.
And she's young enough. So I think she was kind of new to the military when military was fighting horrors and seraphs. And this is a guy who used to make money from killing people for which must seem insane now in this apocalypse.
Yeah.
So I think she kind of looks down on his old profession.
Yeah, I'm wondering also, like, if like on like a wider scale, if people in general look down on Wayne, because like he's this guy who was supposed to have been protecting humanity with the things that he made, and that failed hard. Like, people maybe ridicule him or think lowly of him. if that's something we want to explore, I'm down with that.
Yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, I think that it's absolutely something we can explore as like the vibe of people and what they think of you.
Yeah, and the shame involved. Yeah, I love that actually.
So yeah, it feels really weird, especially coming off Cody from No Quest, where it's like all positive things to all people, and now I'm like 2 negative things. I'm sorry. But yeah, I feel like she would have like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a disdain?
Yeah, disdain for people murder.
Disdain for people. Okay.
All right, Chris, what is your connection? What is Wayne's connection to Simon?
I will interject and say we will end up with four strands each, the way we're doing it, if that's cool, because strands go both ways.
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
So if you're okay with us having 4,
Yeah,
But they can only be tapped once each, right?
Yeah.
yeah. But so it's
Yes.
just so
So
we're on
do
the
I-
same page, and you're okay with us having access to 4 strands.
So
Yeah, I
do
think
I
so.
also put down, like for Alexis, for example, do I also put down that she
Yes.
has disdain for me? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can feel. I'm sure we can all feel this. Like I'm sure Simon feels Alexis's, especially being as good at empathy as he is, but he obviously ignores it. So that's there, or he's trying to.
And like, I think it's probably not active disdain. It's probably just like pure, like the world was different, that the idea of killing, like actively working at killing people when now all we do is try to actively save people is just so against what makes sense to her. And like, she doesn't want you to die, Ryan, and doesn't want to die because of you. So it's not like purely negative.
Yeah, so mine with Simon, I think that one's pretty easy for me. I think with Simon's personality and such, one thing I didn't mention about Wayne's character, his wife would have been one of the people sent up in a pillar of light, and we don't understand what that was to this day. I imagine, right?
No.
Yeah, we don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. 'Cause, I've seen This Is the End, and I think that's a good thing where they go up to heaven, but who knows, right? So I guess he obviously struggles with that mystery, but I think she might have been someone whose personality was very similar to Simon's. And I think that would be interesting because there's definitely maybe some trauma related to me seeing a bit of that in him.
And is that a positive? Like, is that like you want to protect him because of it, or do you hate being around him because of it?
I honestly think it could go both ways. Like, I think in some moments it could be a good thing, and in some moments it could remind me that she's gone, right?
Yeah. Okay. Then I guess like reminds you of life
Yeah.
is, I think, and then you can play with that as you need to.
Yeah. I think it can go both ways for sure.
And then finally, I think the last one we got to do is Ryan, your bond and strand with Wayne.
Yeah, Uncle Wayne.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think Simon has a hard time with Wayne because Wayne does not emote that much, and he obviously Simon I think is so used to getting his way because he's one of the only people who has like a cheery personality. So people are like, "Oh, look at this sweet kid," and he gets very little of that of Wayne to the point where it drives him fucking crazy some days because that's his defense weapon, right? Is being the nice one. So the fact that it doesn't work with Wayne is like it's this eternal struggle, is getting Wayne to emote with him.
Okay.
Because he's hungry for it.
Amazing. Then I think everyone has made a strand with everyone else, right? We haven't missed anyone? Yep.
So.
Perfect. Then I think that concludes our session 0. So the next time we see Alexis, Simon, and Wayne, you will be in the world of Eldritch Automata.
So scared.
And we will learn to pronounce that word, baby.
Yeah.
We will.
Imagine it's Eldritch that we've been pronouncing wrong the whole time.
Yeah.
Eldritch.
It's Eldritch.
It's all right, girl.
Thank you very much, guys. I'm really excited to play this. Chris, we are absolutely thrilled to have you aboard. We cannot wait to play this with you. And we will see everyone listening in 2 weeks for our premiere episode. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you then.